If this year was the year that you promised yourself that you would level up your career and try and earn more money, but now partway through the year you've realized you've actually done none of it, then I think this video is really going to help. My name's Jacob, and for the past 8 years, I've been working in recruitment and employment services. I've placed well over 3,000 jobs to date, ranging from people who are ex-convicts, people with severe disabilities, all the way through to senior executives who were placed in their next leadership positions. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact steps that I would recommend for you to make the most of your current job, or if needed, how to carve out the perfect next opportunity so that by the end of the year, you're working in a role that you love and that pays you more money. Hopefully this video gives you everything you need, but if not, there's a full toolkit available on my website, which is a full end-to-end guide of how to level up your career. And if you need a little bit more help specific to your situation, I also offer one-to-one coaching, details on the website. Firstly, I'm going to make an assumption that you currently have a job. If not, we'll address that in a later video. But for now, let's focus on the job you do have, how we can make it work for you, and how it can earn you more money. So there are 4 ways that you can level up the job you're currently employed in. And the last one is key to making your current job a long-term sustainable gig for you. The first is to try and go for a promotion at work, which I know is much easier said than done. But if you're somebody who is genuinely working at a higher level than their colleagues, and if you're somebody who your colleagues come to for advice, or you're offered special projects or additional work because you're somebody who is trusted to get the job done right, then you're probably within your right to start seeking out a promotion at your current employer. There are 4 ways for you to level up your current job, and the last one is the key for you to unlock a long-term sustainable gig right where you're working at the minute. The first is to go for a promotion, which I know is a lot easier said than done. But if you're someone who is genuinely working at a higher level than their colleagues, if your colleagues are coming to you for advice, for help, if you're being offered additional or extra or special work because you're somebody who is known within the company to be able to get the job done right, then you're probably within your right to at least seek out a promotion from your employer, however that may look. Next are the upcoming milestones at your current job. So by milestones, I mean, are you coming up to 12 months, 18 months, 2 years? Whatever those time frame points might be, these are golden opportunities for you to renegotiate your salary, your package, and also get a contract rewrite to get a few more things written in. The first thing to do is to flat out ask for a pay rise, which again, I know much easier said than done. But the way to go about this is to message or email your boss before you have that sit down FaceTime with them at a milestone or end of probation or whatever time frame meeting that might be. Put together the best business case that you can. This is probably a whole other video, but just while we're on this point, put together what the current salary range is for the job that you do and where you would genuinely pitch yourself in that salary range, and ask yourself, are you being paid at that level? If not, that's where to start. It's very difficult to be in a room with your boss and flat out ask for that. However, if you email or message ahead and say, look, I'd love to renegotiate my salary with you at this meeting, these are my reasons why, then they're going to be much more open to that. So what's currently being paid in the market? What do you bring to the table that could be extra in terms of your additional skills, qualifications, or certificates? Could that take you to an extra level? If so, you could start advocating for a slightly higher level of pay based on that. And the final thing is to look what's currently being advertised for similar roles in the market. Things may have changed since you started your job, especially if it's been a couple of years. There may be jobs being advertised currently at a higher salary. If so, feel free to provide some examples, but go about this delicately. Obviously, you don't want your boss to think that you are looking around for additional roles, but if you at least provide some examples and say, look, I'd love to stay here, but genuinely in the market, this is being what's offered at alternative companies, and be honest and upfront about the varying different aspects of those jobs that could mean that it's different to the current one you have. Put that together in a business case, lay it out, and ask politely. Next, to put in place some performance-based incentives, some bonuses or commissions. So most jobs, the point of them is to earn money for their boss or for their employer. So assuming that the job you have in some way earns your boss or your employer some money, could you do more of the thing that makes them the money? Could you do more efficient work? Could you do more of the specific tasks that bring in that revenue? Could you be motivated to do those things more, better, more efficiently if you had a goal set in terms of a performance-based incentive? And by that, I mean, if you perform at this level, we will pay you this much more than you're currently getting. This varies wildly across industries, and in some industries it's not really relevant, but in most, you've got a good case to put together some aspect of a performance-based incentive or commission, however that might look for you. And the final aspect of this is to put together a timeline of raises written into your contract. So again, at these milestones, you're probably well within your right to ask for a contract rewrite, be it very small. You could approach your boss and say, if by the next milestone, if by the next year or by the next 6 months, I have done X for you, would you agree to pay me Y? Based on the benefit and the value that's going to provide for your company. That's really key. And this is the one that I mentioned would be key to being sustainable for your career. If you can lay out a plan where you're due steady pay rises over these milestones with targets to aim for, with bonuses, and perhaps even with a pay rise right now, then that means you don't have to move job at all. You could stay where you are. You could stay comfortable, stay within your skill remit, stay at the company that you know and hopefully like, and make it a sustainable gig for you long term. Next is to update your CV. And if you're having a particularly bad week at work, you may feel more inclined to do this. Spend a couple of hours on a couple of nights this week updating your CV, which I know seems like a bit of a mundane task, but actually once you dive into it, it's quite a fulfilling thing to do. Seeing objectively and written down what you've done, what you've achieved, how far you've come over the past few years. Not only that, is that you're going to see objectively and in black and white what your actual experience is. You're going to see in full what your qualifications, your experience, your skills are. So you've got an objective view of your value, either within the industry that you're currently working with or where you could potentially move based on the skills and everything that you're seeing in front of you. While I obviously don't advocate for lying on your CV, there's certain aspects that you can add flavor to. So if you've had any specific achievements at work, or if you've headed up any projects or been in a leadership position, done any training, anything like that that's a bit more special than the day-to-day stuff that you do, feel free to add as much flavor as you can to that aspect of your CV, so that when a potentially new employer is looking at that, they look at that and think, gosh, this is somebody who we need to take from their current employer and implement them into ours because they're going to add this kind of value. That's particularly important if you are staying within your industry and someone who is a competitor to the business that you currently work for. If they see that, they're going to want to nab you and probably pay you more for a different role. There is a lot that we could cover with CVs, and I've got a whole aspect of the toolkit on my website, a full video and step-by-step guide and everything on how to create the best possible CV. But the crux of it is your CV is just your black and white evidence of what you've done, who you are, what your skills are, what your experiences are, and what your qualifications are. It's the final ticket for you to vouch that you are who you say you are. There's a lot more that goes into job searching, which we're going to address in another video, but it is key for you to have that updated, at least for yourself, so you can visually see your value so that you could take that to a new job if needed. The third and the fourth thing I'm going to go through here are much less sexy than the others. And sorry to keep numbering things, I've just got to number them in my mind to keep track of these ideas. So third and the fourth, much less sexy than the others, especially the fifth one that we're going to go through in a bit more depth. So that's the one that's really going to give you the opportunity to carve out a brand new role and have a lot of say over what your pay can be. But for now, third and the fourth, and they are education and volunteering. Now with education, I'm well aware that over the past couple of years, there's been less emphasis for getting great jobs with the classical education of degrees and qualifying from a red brick university and having a master's on your CV or whatever that may be. There's much less emphasis on that, and people are actually just hiring people based on their current skills and their experience rather than a formal degree, as was the case kind of 30, 40, 50 years ago, where that would have been more highly sought after and valued. However, in some jobs, in some industries, specific qualifications, certificates, tickets will be necessary for you to have evidence for on your CV, or would give you a leg up or additional pay banding if you were to have those. However, I do appreciate that a lot of these courses do come at a fairly high cost, which is where friends and family come in. Bear with me. An example, a few years ago, I was working as a personal trainer, and I wanted to take my career to the next level and start teaching and assessing personal trainer qualifications for more money and to be able to move into that long term. Anyway, I couldn't afford the course. My current employer wouldn't support it, and I couldn't just go and ask a future employer. So I pulled them together and said, hey guys, for this year, please get me this qualification course as a gift, which they did. I got the qualification and I started working in that field as a result. The great thing about that is that I did feel some ownership and responsibility to friends and family who had helped pay for that course to make sure that I actually completed it, passed it, and then used it. Next is volunteering, which I've actually got a personal huge soft spot for. I really don't think volunteering is talked about enough, especially right now. I don't really remember an instance over the past few months or years where I've heard someone really advocate for volunteering as a way to step up your career and how it could actually help you fairly quickly. So I'll give you an example. 8 years ago, I was working in the fitness industry. I'd gone from fitness instructor, PT, gym manager, leisure center manager to a point where I needed to get out. I woke up one day and I'd got so far away from my initial goal of starting in fitness that I just needed an out. I really enjoyed doing this, helping people with their employment goals. I was intaking a lot of staff. I was having to hire all the time, as well as a lot of staff leaving for bigger and better opportunities from the place that we all worked. I enjoyed actually helping them and doing their references, which led to a thought of this could be a potential career for me, but I didn't know for sure, and I didn't just want to quit my job and start working in a completely different industry. So I started volunteering. I was still working in a management role, essentially full-time through the week, but I just found a few hours where I was able to do some volunteering for a local charity. So over a period of about 4 months, I volunteered for, I think, between 2 and 4 hours a week, so that by the end of the 4 months, I'd got a few hours of experience and had some good results. In that short 3 or 4 months that I did that, I went from being a leisure center manager to then running a regional employment program within 3 or 4 months. And that was actually the job that ended up quadrupling my salary long term because it gave me that sidestep. So I personally have a lot of faith in volunteering, and I really think it's something that you should explore. Yes, I'm essentially asking you to work for free, but just think of the long-term value that that could potentially add. And there are actually no downsides. Maybe you start volunteering in a brand new industry that you're thinking of moving into and hate it. That's great. That means that you've tried it, you've given it a good shot, you've not lost anything. Your employer probably doesn't know you're doing that in volunteering, and you know that that's not the right move for you. Then you could try a different industry, use the next couple of months to volunteer in that regard and see what becomes your thing. Okay, the fifth and final one is the biggie. This is where things get really interesting and allow you to carve a brand new job out for yourself for potentially much more money. And I know that a few of the things that I'm about to go through, you will very likely not have thought about before. Option one actually allows you to stay working in the industry that you're currently working in, where you're comfortable, that you know, that you may well love and don't actually want to move from, but just gives you a different direction for you to be able to level up your career. There are 5 things that you can actually do with what you do on a daily basis to massively blow up your career. So take a second and think about what you actually do on a daily basis at work. Could you teach it? Could you sell it? Could you do it for a higher paying employer? Could you run a team of people who do what you do using your experience? Or could you freelance and go out and do it by yourself? All right, let's use an example of a career or a job. So let's pick being a chef in a restaurant. That's your job. Could you teach cookery or chefing to apprentices or at a local college? Could you sell the products that you work with on a daily basis, like the high-end ovens or knives that you are familiar with, that you've been working with for years? Could you approach a company who manufacture those and sell them for them as somebody who's got a heap of experience working with that product? Could you work at a higher paying employer? So rather than working in a restaurant, could you approach a yacht firm and work on yachts? Or could you work in a high-end corporate working tower where you're the head chef in their staff canteen? Could you potentially run a team of chefs who work for a local or a regional hospitality brand? So could you run the menus? Could you help train the group of chefs that they've got working within that business? And finally, could you go out and freelance and chef for yourself? So could you be one of those freelance chefs who people have for dinner parties? Or could you start your own cookery or ingredient course that you then venture off with all your experience and take it to the next level on your own? What I love about those 5 options there is that you can stay doing what you're doing right now, but just in a slightly different way and for much more money, which if you implement it now, by the end of the year, could massively blow up your career and your fulfillment at work. All right, option two, and there are only three, so bear with me. Option two is to step slightly outside of the industry in which you're currently working in. So the first aspect of that is to do some research, whether that's LinkedIn, ChatGPT, Google, websites, however you choose to do it, and see who is employing people who do exactly what you do, but for more money. It's going to be a real kick in the balls when you find these people, but out there'll be some information available to show you that people who do exactly what you do are getting paid more by either working in a slightly different industry or, again, doing the job that you do, but in a slightly different way. Go out and find those employers, find how the people who got those jobs, and start making small steps towards how you can do that for yourself. On the flip side, we can look at this as approaching businesses who currently don't employ anyone who does what you do, but who could really benefit from employing someone who does what you do. So let's use a random example again. Let's think you're a forklift driver. If you were to approach a distribution company or a warehouse who, for whatever reason, doesn't currently employ forklift drivers, they've probably got output from their warehouse of X, just with people running around packing boxes on pallets and loading them onto lorries, whatever they're doing. If you approach them and say, look, I'm a forklift driver. If you bought a forklift for however much, I would drive it for you. And over the next year, we'd speed up your output that you're getting these boxes and pallets out of your warehouse by 3 times. That means that you could approach that employer with a great idea that they'd probably be grateful for. You could say, this is what I need to be paid. This is what my salary package needs to be. This is what my contracts and hours need to look like. And you may have a genuine shot there of getting yourself your own job that you've carved that could be a truly great, sustainable opportunity for you. And finally, option 3, which I'm going to call the wild card. So here we're thinking about a complete change of industry or a relocation in a couple of ways. So the first, a complete change of industry. Having looked at your CV, having sat down and reflected on what you're actually capable of, what you're doing at the moment, what you could do, is a complete sidestep in industry on the cards for you? Could you use what you've been doing on a daily basis in a different way, in a different industry, to give you more fulfillment, more money, whatever you want from work? Let's think about an example to illustrate this point. So, for example, you work in a cafe or a bakery, which a lot of people would consider an entry-level role. However, you're doing stuff on a daily basis that might give you and might be on par with what people are doing in massively high-paying careers. If you're someone who is able to work in a cafe or bakery and occasionally upsell a table an extra cake or an extra coffee, something like that, you're then demonstrating some sales skill there and also a way of communicating with those customers to get them to buy more products at a time that's right for them. Bear with me. Could you do that, but on a bigger scale? So rather than upselling a cake or a coffee, could you sell a much bigger thing, like, for example, a house? Could you use the skills that you've been working in the cafe and day out, use that to sell houses? That would potentially be a much more lucrative career where you'd have the opportunity to work on much bigger projects and for much bigger products, which could give you that massive upswing in your career that you've been looking for. In terms of relocating, I think this is a really underestimated thing. So thinking about where you live at the moment, could you commute into the next biggest town or city? Could you physically move to an even bigger city to give yourself more opportunities that potentially pay more while still keeping your living costs down? Or if you're after just more of a work-life balance, would a move overseas to a completely different country or a completely different region of the country be what you need to make you feel fulfilled at work? A quick example of that is that I was recently in New Zealand, and some of the happiest people I met were the guys who were living and working there in a cafe in the morning. They do the brekkie shift and then they go out and hit the ski slopes in the afternoon. If that's the balance that you're seeking, if it's not money, if it's not clout status, if it's more of that, then that's probably where this could work for you. We've just covered a massive amount. We've covered how to rinse your current job. We've talked about how and why you should be updating your CV as soon as possible. We've talked about education, the value of volunteering, how to find and create yourself a much better job and a few wildcard options. So I hope you found that really useful. It's been quite a fun one to make. This is actually my first video on YouTube, so please be kind in the comments. There's going to be another video linked above one of my shoulders. I don't know which side it pops up. For now, that's probably not going to be one of mine, given this is the first video that I've made. But YouTube's a pretty smart bugger, so no doubt what pops up here will also be relevant to you. Like I said, check out everything on the website. I'm going to only be talking to you guys about how to take an upswing in your career, earn more money, give you more fulfillment at work. That's what I do with Work with Jacob. And if I can just help one person reach what they're looking for in terms of fulfillment at work, or to help themselves or their family's future prospects, then this will all be worth it. Thanks for watching.